I got to tell you, Denise, it is absolutely amazing to me that probably 90 to 95% of companies in America don't do this. I don't understand it at all. Companies literally have a free funnel of not only employee appreciation through social media for their people, but that funnel also works for marketing and branding their business for free. And it's amazing for both recruiting and retention.
Hi there, I'm Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And I have with me today Matt Rieck from InZone Insurance Services. And Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I really look forward to our discussion. Matt is also the author of a book that I have purchased and read called The Employee Retention Bible. So we'll discuss some information about that, of course, and the purpose of the book. Well, in fact, I love your chapter 1. Why do we need an employee retention Bible? So we can jump into that. But first, tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself.
First of all, thank you so much for having me, Denise. I really appreciate you having me on the podcast as a guest. I wrote this book, gosh, about 4 months ago. I started, and I've been here with InZone as the chief of human resources for about a year and a half. And I am an old HR dog. I've been in HR my whole career. I started way back as like a first level generalist in the bottom, and then I've worked my way up over the years. And yeah, there's things that all of us are really good at, and there's things that all of us are terrible at. So I'm old enough now that I know which things I'm good at, and then I pay people to do the other stuff because I'm going to mess it up anyway. So anything with numbers or Excel or detail, I will hire an analytical right under me to do all of that kind of work and pay them really well and say, take all that work off my plate so that I don't dork it out for everybody. I'm really only good at training and development and employee retention. And those are my kind of two passions. And so that's what I do for work. And luckily, that's a skill that somebody will pay me for. So I'm grateful for that.
I love it. Training and development. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a conversation in itself.
It is. Yeah.
Really, it is. But let's launch because I do want to talk about your book, and your book is new. Well, like I said at the beginning, chapter 1, why do we need an employee retention Bible? So tell us why.
So the real answer to that is simply that turnover is really expensive for companies and companies don't know how to fix it. And when you try to tell people how expensive employee turnover is, at first, any leader that I've ever talked to about this will balk at the number, and then as soon as I'm done with the explanation, they're right there with me. So let me do that quick. So the best way to calculate what it costs to turn over an employee, like if you look at the Department of Labor, they'll tell you that it's 12 to 16 months salary to turn over an employee. And you go, well, how can that be? It's not a whole year plus salary. There's no way that it costs that much. And I say, okay, let's kind of do the math together like this. If you have an employee that's disengaged that works for you, how many people have we seen that sit at your companies that are kind of doing the bare minimum, that are already kind of checked out, that maybe have had either a bad experience at a company or with a manager or just not super happy in their role anymore? And they'll sit there for a year or two. We've all had those people at our companies before. So that person is not optimal. They're not taking great care of your clients, and they're just doing enough work not to poke the bear, right? So there's a loss there of having a really good performer doing that position. Then when that person leaves, if they leave with no liability, leave on good terms, you hope, then you've got to write a job ad, you've got to post it, you've got to pay to have it up somewhere, you've got to pay a recruiter to find the person, you got to have multiple rounds of interviews, you got to vet them with drug tests and background checks and all this other kind of good stuff. It's expensive just to get somebody on. Then you've got the first 3 to 6 months where they have no idea what they're doing, and you don't know if they're going to be any good in the role, because we've all had people that interview really well. And then when they show up the first day, you're like, who are you? Because this is not the person that I interviewed. And we've had other people where you're like, I just need a body in this role really bad to take on this work. And you get them, and the person turns out to be a great person. So interviewing and actually doing the job are two completely different things, I think we've all learned. And so when you say that to a business owner, or to a leader of a company, they go, that makes sense. So then let's do the math quick. Let's say that you take 1 year salary, we'll take the low end of their estimates, and you go, how many people quit, laid off, or were terminated at your employee last year? So if you just, let's say it's 15 people, you take 15 people's 1 year salary and you go, holy cow, that's a lot of money. When you realize how much it costs to turn over employees. And companies don't really have a way to fix it, Denise. And so this book tries to set out the simplest methods that we possibly know. And by the way, none of the ideas in this book are mine. They're all from people much smarter than me that I've learned or stolen over the years and put together in a format that I hope is easy to understand.
I saw you wrote that in here. That's
I do. Yeah, I'm not going to take credit for anything I didn't think up, but all people smarter than me.
well. Also, too, let's talk about the cost of training. When you
Yes.
hire somebody, how much time does it take to train you? Like you mentioned it a minute ago. You've got that, what, 3 to 6 months that they come on board and they're learning the business and they're learning their job and whatnot. So the person that you let go, all that training goes out the door, right?
Yeah,
Along with
you
that
lose the
employee.
institutional knowledge,
Right,
right?
right. And now you have to reskill and retrain somebody new that you bring in for that role. So, I mean, just that cost alone, to me.
Well, it's really crazy, Denise, when you think about it like that. And keep in mind, there's other intangible things that happen too. Now, when you bring somebody new in from the outside, we all know as employers, you're going to have to pay somebody more. And then if you're bringing somebody that's fresh in the market, you're probably going to have to scale up your existing people that are also in the same role to be able to match that new employee's salary so you don't have disparity there. So it's very costly to get new people in and get them running. And then you just hope that they work out. And there's the cost to train and develop new employees, but then there's also the cost of not training and developing people. And that's a really big problem in America too in business is that companies, one of the biggest issues, I have a short chapter about it in the book, is that they don't train and develop their managers. So once somebody is put in a manager role, you go, Bob was great at making widgets, make him the widget making manager. And then you throw him in there, and then Bob doesn't have any skills on how to lead people, how to discipline people, how to motivate people, how to get great results out of them. He's just really good at making widgets. So the companies kind of drop the ball once somebody's a manager and think, well, they're just going to be great at it. But they don't always equate.
Yeah, you mentioned, in fact, we'll talk about it in a minute, the progressive discipline. And you talk about the managers actually taking that role with their subordinates, if you would, or people that are working for them in terms of disciplining. And if they don't have the training and leadership training and development, like you're mentioning, the yeah, who- where, how are they going to lead well?
Yeah, and I think it's a ball drop for many companies where they say, "Well, let HR take the disciplining and termination of employees." Of course, if there's some legal liability or there's any kind of thing like that, HR is going to need to be involved. But if you don't teach managers how to discipline and terminate their people, then they won't feel responsible for retaining the people. I even recommend in the book that you make a small part of your manager's bonus tied to their employee retention. If you affect people's money, people will change their behavior very quickly. And so that's a easy way to do it. But part of disciplining employees is not just slapping the hand. It's also, can you coach this person back up? If you've got a person that's performing at like a C player level, can you turn that person back around to get them coached up to be able to do a good day's work for a good day's wage, like be a B player and perform that way and just be a steady Eddie, as they call it. Just show up every day, they punch their clock, they do a good day's work. And you can get people that are not performing well up to that sometimes. And we all know that there's sometimes that you can't, but that's also the manager's responsibility, and if you don't put that on them, then why are you paying them more? And you're not just paying them more, you're also paying them not to produce anymore. So if you have a person that was good at production, you take them out of that production role now to manage, and that's what they're there for, is to be able to get those people up to speed.
You kind of wonder what comes first in the chicken or the egg here on the training and development piece of it, right? With when you hire, I mean, are you when you have a position open then, you have to almost look at your hiring staff and who the person is gonna work for. And is that person in a position to lead once those other people or the one person that you need to hire is brought on board, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. There's a couple of points within what you just said. The first one is that the danger is in companies is that we want to hire people that are like us. We want to hire people that we see similar traits in, similar personalities, whether we're outgoing or we're analytical or whatever it happens to be. And you have the person that's hiring consistently going to try to bring people on that are like them because they think they'll be able to get along with them. The danger there is that you really get groupthink. You never get any new ideas. You never get anybody to go, well, we did this at our other company. It worked great. Or just to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea because everybody thinks and is brought in to do the same. And that's where companies stagnate a lot of times and teams stagnate is because you don't ever have any other point of view come in because you're just hiring people that are just like you. And so that's an important part of the hiring process too, is understanding that you have to hire people for the skill set, but really, I know you've been over this just like me. You've had a long career of seeing what people work out well and what people don't. I don't really hire for education or for experience anymore, Denise. I hire for attitude because the other ones will come. I can't teach the right attitude to be able to perform well at the job. And it's critical because you can teach a competent, willing person anything, even if they've not even been from that industry before, because they'll step in and they'll figure things out. They'll take it on. But if you don't have the right attitude or somebody thinks that they have so much experience or they're so arrogant that they can't learn anything new, then there's no change or development there. And that's important for a company too to innovate.
So from that, let's
Yeah.
let's talk about the ABC players because I think that's a
Yes.
good segue into that. So that's
Yep.
the chapter on that's chapter 7. I know I'm jumping ahead a few chapters here, but I think it's just a good segue there. And it says here, and 3 times. ABC players and 3 times. So I loved this section in here, and you were so right when you talk about your A players are your top 20% of your staff, and your B players are 60% of your staff,
Mhm.
and then you've got your C players that they're the other 20% of your staff. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute.
So yeah, and again, this is a concept I learned in my time consulting that I was really grateful to pick up because it's true. So first of all, when you talk about A players, those are generally the high performing people that if you put them in any role, they're going to be a rock star. They're going to push. They're highly motivated, competitive people. They want to do well. They're willing to put in the extra work. Or if they don't know how to do something, they'll develop themselves to be able to be successful. They'll talk to people. They're humble enough to learn from other people. But the danger with A players in America is that you have to be careful with how you manage them in a company because those are the people that it's going to take a year for them to master the job. By the second year, they're already going to start getting bored, and going into 2.5 years, into 3, they're already going to be looking for their next role or their next challenge. So you can keep them, they'll perform at a high level for you, but in order to retain them long term beyond that 3 or 4 years, you have to have yearly reviews in place. You've got to have succession planning in place. You've got to have a path for them where they understand where they can go at your company. Also, you have to make sure, especially with those people, especially if you're part of a bigger company that tiers out compensation. Let's just use a typical example in America. Let's say that high performers are getting a 5%, your midline performers are getting a 3%, and then your other employees are getting a 1 to 2% that are underperforming, or you're not sure if you're going to keep those people, right? Let's just use a kind of a typical setup like that. So if you do that, you need to make sure that those A players are getting that top tier of percent, especially to keep up, because we all know that it's more profitable for employees in America if they're not in kind of a commission or a sales role, that every 3 to 4 years, if they hop to another company, the average increase there is 17.1% if you go from one company to another. And now the average raise in America is 3% per year. So in 3 years, they're going to be at 9% max. You're missing 6% at least of the income by not leaving every 3 to 4 years from a company in America right now. So it's companies' jobs that if you really want to retain those top players, you've got to make sure that they're up at that 5% or more in order to facilitate whether it's them going to a new level or just keeping them at the top of the pay scale, because otherwise you're going to lose those people if they're not paid and engaged properly. That's for the A players. Okay. The B players are all of your regular folks. They show up every day on time, they punch their clock, they work hard, they take their lunch, they go home to their families, and they're the bread and butter of your company. Your company cannot survive without these hardworking people. And you've got to be super grateful to them, keep them engaged, make sure that you're communicating really well with them, and then those folks will carry your company forward. Those are your workhorses and the backbone of your company. And then your C players are your people that are in one of two buckets. And you're always going to have, if you have 100% of people, you're always going to have a bottom 20% of people. And that's either number one, because they're either disengaged, whether that means that they're not able to do the role, or that this role is not right for them at all. So it's either a matter of they shouldn't be in this type of role, they're in the wrong seat on the bus or in the wrong company, or they're just completely disengaged for one reason or another. Now, disengaged for one reason or other can be coworkers, managers, company culture. They're just not happy with where they're at in their life, whatever it happens to be. And the other one might just be like, this is just really not the job for them. Somebody thinks they'll be great in sales, but they can't sell anything. So those kind of parodies happen, right? Like all the time. And it can be either one of those. So your duty as a leader with the C players is to try to have a lot of conversations with them where you're very clear about what the expectations are and where they're not being met, and to say, is this the right role for you here in this? Is this the right company for you? If it is, let's help you get coached up to a level you're going to be comfortable. I'm not going to be having to call you into my office every month to have these talks with you, and just make sure that you're doing well. Or do we need to help transition you because this doesn't look like it's a good fit? Yeah. So when the concept of 3X also is, if you have a company, like a great way to talk to a business owner about how their company would grow is to say, take your company 3X the size that it is right now. Okay, so what would you need at 3 times the size that you don't have now? And you'd go, oh, well, I would need this role that I don't have. And maybe we need to have this kind of system that we don't have. And we need to do deliveries or packaging a different way, all that type of stuff. And it gives the business owner an idea of where the company would need to go to be successful. But what that also does to the people is you might have an A player at 1X, your company size right now. So if you've got 1,000-person company, they're an A player. But at a 2,000-person company, they could only be a B player for a amount of time, because not because they're not willing, but they don't have the skills to lead a 2,000-person company. And so they might eventually be able to get up there, but they're going to make a lot of mistakes to get up there on the way, and it's going to be messy and probably cost more, right? It'll probably take longer too than somebody that has done it before. So that's what we're talking about: is the company scales, people's skills have to increase along the way. Otherwise, they're just going to keep sliding down that scale of performance because they don't have the skills to lead at that new level.
Oh, that is so interesting that you bring that up. Let Just briefly, and it's not in your book, but one of the things that keeps coming to my mind as you're sharing this information is
Yeah.
Gen Z,
Mm,
because we have this new generation of people coming into the workforce, right?
right.
And by next year, it's going to be what, 27, 28% of our workforce is going to be Gen Z. And they do want to advance fast. So keeping them happy, keeping them progressing from B to A, and having them on that, like, path forward.
Let's talk about Gen Z and millennials and how they're different from my generation or from the boomer generation. So things are valued differently. First of all, kind of pecking order or chain of command that was really important to my generation or the generation that's older than me doesn't matter anymore to them, especially when you have CEOs like Elon Musk saying that the best way to get business done is to talk to whoever in the company can get it done the fastest. So that completely obliterates the concept of chain of command if you do that. Not every company is structured like that. Most companies are more traditional than his. However, that type of thought process of why does everything have to be this way is much more prevalent in their mind because they're used to receiving information much faster than us from a young age because of technology. And so when you have people that don't have to do things status quo because they can get on their phone and find out 5 other ways to do it, or get on ChatGPT and find out 5 other ways to do it very quickly, then what is the use of always having to do the same thing the same way is the way that their brain is processing. Also, the older you go as far as generations in the workforce right now, the more you slide up into the thought process of we're supposed to have loyalty to companies. But these new folks have seen through the last 10 to 15 years of companies doing mass layoffs, mass rehiring, and then mass layoffs again, that they can't be loyal to companies if companies aren't loyal to them. So this is where it becomes the job seeker's job to go do your Glassdoor, your Google, your Yelp reviews to look at the company to make sure this in LinkedIn, this is a place you actually want to work that hasn't behaved badly in the past. Because if they have, then you go, okay, well, that's probably going to be my fate as somebody with low seniority when I go into a company. So people aren't as loyal to companies anymore as they are to their own careers. So, okay, so how do you adjust for that as a manager? Well, first of all, you cut out all the red tape that's unnecessary and just talk to them directly about what's important. And so if you go down line and let them know, like, hey, this is a really lost thing because the older generations, my generation and the generation above me, they didn't need to know why. They just were told to do it and they did it, or they accepted that this is the way that we do things here. The younger generations have to know why. So when you're putting together their programs for their work, whether it be training, their development, whatever it happens to be, your employee appreciation, you have to talk about the why that you're doing things so they have the understanding of that. And there's a gap there between the generations. And you're seeing it more and more now is that as the boomer generation ages out of the workforce, most of them are senior leadership or have been in their current roles for a long time, then the younger generation is just going to keep coming up and it's going to be very technology driven. Things are going to move much faster. There's going to be less in-person discussion because that's what they've had the last 4 years too, right? A lot of the folks that are coming into the workforce right now didn't get to finish high school because of the virus. They were home on their computers for their high school. Some of them are going on for college and some of them will not ever go to a sitting desk workforce like we're used to, or if they do, it might be a hybrid workforce. So there's a big gap there in opinions about what works and what's important anymore.
And with having these generational differences, if you would,
Mhm.
even if the baby boomer generation, or once they do fall away from the workforce, and you have what's the next one up? Gen X, right? And then you've got millennials, and then the Gen Z. How then do you adjust, like, going back to the ABC players, how do you then adjust to retain these people? What's going to retain them? And I love something you brought up in your book too about employee appreciation on social media, because I think that is gonna be, besides keeping people engaged, keeping them moving forward, especially the go-getters, right? Your A players.
I got to tell you, Denise, it is absolutely amazing to me that probably 90 to 95% of companies in America don't do this. I don't understand it at all. Companies literally have a free funnel of not only employee appreciation through social media for their people, but that funnel also works for marketing and branding their business for free. And it's amazing for both recruiting and retention. So let me give you some examples for anybody that hasn't looked at the book, just real easy. Let's use ones that everybody knows. So let's say that you use the old employee of the month, or you can call it employee spotlight if you think that's cheesy. So I'm guessing that somebody at your employment once a month does something good that you're proud of as an employer. And if you can't take the time to say, this month's employee spotlight is on Denise because she's really helped up, she's helped train the new people, she's got a great legacy at this company, she's done this and this, and you say, Denise, we'd like to recognize you on an email to the company or to your vertical if it's a huge company, to your team, right? Can we take your photo and a short article about you? Is that okay? Yes, it is. Okay, great. Is it also okay if we go ahead and put that on LinkedIn and our social medias for the company? Sure, it is. So, okay, so what happens then is now you get the good feeling for Denise and everybody else reads that, it shows that the company appreciates their employees. It goes out to market and it shows that you're doing employee appreciation for people that are considering coming onto your company to combat. If you've ever had a bad Glassdoor review, and every company ever has had a bad Glassdoor review, right? It combats that because there's this good feedback now. And the other thing that it does, it's really important, Denise, is it tells your people that work for you what you value. So if you say Denise had this, and this behavior, and she has been great for these reasons, now other people understands what the company appreciates, and you're going to get more replication of that type of behavior. But That's one. Now you can do this en masse. Every month you have a sales leader. Every month, if you track your KPIs, I'm guessing you have a service leader. You have people on 5, 10, 15-year work anniversaries that you should be acknowledging. And what does that show the market about that longevity that you brought up, especially to the younger generations that are used to every 2 to 3 years getting a new job? It shows them people have been here 5, 10, 15 years. Somebody's able to stand this company. There must be reasons that people can stay there, and people follow example. So if they see that other people can say, they consider staying too. So that's just a couple. There's like 12 different things in the book that you can do like that that are all free that companies aren't doing right now. And it makes no sense to me. In addition to everything else, like I said, it's just free marketing for the company.
I love this. The other piece of it too is what I've noticed on social media is the employees themselves will take pictures of themselves with their badge from 3 years ago or 5 years ago, or what their office looked like when they first joined. And they'll take some picture and then they'll have a duplicate picture of themselves now, right? And they'll say, "Oh, now I'm here," however long that they're there. They'll share their own anniversary, which is also free marketing. Now, that's a happy employee that is sharing their anniversary.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing, and then the company should take that with their permission and share it out on their networks and do a little paragraph or 2 about why this person is great too, and you do this type of stuff. Let's say that you give your employees a small swag bag when they come in. They get a backpack with a couple of pieces of candy in it, some pens, and a coffee cup. It probably cost the company 30 bucks. Something like that will then get shared on their own social media. The company can share it, and it's just this constant branding of free employee appreciation that companies are missing out on that makes no sense to me. I think every company should be doing it.
Every company should be doing it because they are posting their swag on social media. All the new employees, I see so much swag being posted on social media for new employees. And what's really interesting, they are truly appreciative of that. Like, hey, welcome to the company, welcome to the team type of swag that they're receiving. So the fact that, and it's like you said, it's free advertising, but they would actually have pictures,
Mhm.
photos of people who've been with the company and showing how long they've been there. I mean, where when you walk into the building, you can see photographs and whatnot. Now, do people
But
still do that?
you don't see that a lot anymore at most companies, do you? And companies are missing the fact that you have to market to your own people about why the company is great too. A lot of people are just not in it for a paycheck anymore because they can go down the street and get a paycheck too. But why is your company someplace not only do they want to work at, but they want to stay at? It can't just be the paycheck. So if it's the paycheck, plus it's the employee appreciation, plus it's the longevity of the company and how it values its people. And the other thing that that does too, companies kind of miss how easy it is to foster competition in their people because it gets plotted in these little sectors and it stays in these little groups. But if you've got a company that sells stuff and every company sells stuff, like there should be a big red and black leaderboard on the wall every month with where everybody is at and where they're at for a year. And it should be just competition up there all the time. And these things are easy and cheap, and companies miss out on them to get to the heart of that. This is a place where, like, it's a living organism of things happening and moving and changing all the time.
And I think you bring up an excellent point that it has to be something physical as well
Yes.
in that company, in their hallways, in conference rooms, in cafeterias, wherever it is that people are going to congregate, for meetings or whatnot. So it's not just social media that is advertising the success of the company and the employees and showing that employee appreciation.
It's really important, but companies miss it, Denise.
They do. They do. And you brought up another point about employees not wanting just a paycheck. So let's talk about PTO. Okay. And you brought up PTO, and I was glad that you brought it up and separating, well, first of all, removing PTO from the HR language, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And talking about separating vacation and sick time. One of the things I have to give Intel credit for, because they've been a client for a long time, is they also their what do they call it? They give them every 7 years? The
Cool.
sabbaticals, thank you.
Mhm.
The sabbaticals, that talk about employee appreciation. And they changed it, I think they changed it to every 4 years now. You can either opt for 4 years or go to 7 years or something like that, but you can have this extra time off with. Talk about that. To me, that was always huge for their company, and one of the reasons that it kept people. It was a great employee retention motivator because you had employees who wouldn't leave if they were too close. As even if they were kind of like, oh yeah, that company might be kind of interesting to speak with, but nah, I'm really close to my sabbatical right now. And I've earned it. I've worked for it. I'm not leaving. So talk about PTO and let's talk about PTO and vacay and separating vacation and sick time and adding in sabbaticals and things like that.
So, okay, first of all, companies shouldn't lump their sick and vacation time together. And first of all, many states make it difficult for companies to do that, but companies don't understand until they get a lawsuit why they shouldn't do this. Well, first of all, in every state, there's a certain amount of sick time that's guaranteed, and all the state laws are different, right? So let's use California because I'm in California. So, California, if you're going to have X number of sick hours on the book. If you lump them in and make your vacation and PTO together and then you leave, well, the law is that you've got to pay people out their vacation time. Well, if it's all lumped together, then how do you know how much to pay them? You have to say, well, this was like a thing where I dropped off my kid, or this was at sick time, or what, the kid had the sniffle, so I had to work from home that day, or whatever. It all gets lumped and it gets messy when you have to let people go. And if that employee decides to be dodgy and says, hey, like, I think that I should just get paid all of this, there's a pretty strong claim with most labor boards at the state that they're going to end up saying, yes, you have to pay them out all that time because it wasn't clearly delineated what was what when the person went out. And so if you just lump it together because it makes it sound great to say that you have 40 hours instead of 30 hours because it's all smushed together, it's still 40 hours. And you can just say it's 30 hours of vacation and 10 hours of sick, but or whatever it happens to be for your company. But that's the point, is that don't lump them together because then it creates a barrier to that. And I have some more controversial opinions on PTO as well. One is that I don't think companies should have their employees cash out their PTO and or their sick and vacation time. The reason for that isn't because I don't want people to have their money around tax time or around Christmas time for their families. It's because then employees hoard the time and they don't take vacation. And we know from many years of research that when people don't take at least a couple of weeks off a year, they get burnt out. They're disengaged. They don't work as hard. They don't care as much. They're easier to flare up their temper. They get sick more. All that stuff types to happen. And so when you do that, like, it's like, hey, have the people take a couple of weeks off a year. And that's why also I push companies like, don't do the state minimums for your vacation time, all this type of stuff. Like, give people a good amount of time that they can take off and spend with their families because it will increase their longevity with you. It will also, like, you know how you feel when you come back and now this is where it's important because companies in America don't often do this anymore. You should not come back to a full inbox and a desk full of work. You should come back to a clean inbox and a clean desk. And whose job is it to take care of that? It's the manager's job to say, Denise is going to be out the last week of January. So these people are going to take her emails these days. These people are going to take her work these days. And that's how it's going to be covered so that when she gets back the first work of February, she's got a clean inbox and she's got a clean desk. And that is the way that it should work. And you know the other reason people don't take vacation in America? It's because they come back and that inbox is full and they go, why did I even leave? Because now I'm so stressed because I have a whole week of work to do by myself.
Oh my gosh, you bring up that's a huge point. So what would you call that? That's a benefit in itself.
No, it's the crazy thing is we shouldn't even have to name for that. That should be what the general MO of every company is. It's like if people are gone, their work gets done while they're gone. And that's part of training and developing your managers as well. So you're right about sabbatical. Like if people are there a certain number of years, allow them a sabbatical to take some extra time and pay them during the time that they're out because you value them so much. You're showing them that, if they've been there 5 years or seven, like you mentioned, or 10 years, that they can take a month off and that you can pay for it because you care about the longevity of having them and their mental health. And the other thing that's important too, when you look at time off is we talk about the marketing of companies. Put a charitable time off program in place at your company. If you only want it to be 1 day a year, fine. I'd say do 2 or 3. What that does is, let's say you do 2 days a year of charitable time off. It's 2 extra days of vacation that a person can take to donate to a local charity. So let's say that you have Bob and he has some family down in Florida with what happened with the hurricane, and he wants to go help the Red Cross for a couple of days. And you say, Bob, that's wonderful. We're going to pay you for those couple of days on top of your normal vacation. And if you take a couple of pictures, we'll make an article about it and we'll put the link for the Red Cross so that people can donate. And then the Red Cross gets some more donations. And the company also gets a lot of goodwill story for doing that and contributing to the community. And see how that works
Marketing.
all the way across the board and what kind of good vibes that brings. But hardly any companies do that. And I don't know why. I think it's because they don't even know that they can.
Okay, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people go and take and help others, and especially during disaster relief efforts and what. But as far as paying employees to take those couple days off, I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, we call it a charitable time off program. It's a
Charitable
it's a
time
great way.
off. Love that.
It's a great way for companies to contribute back to the community, and it also just creates a lot of goodwill all the way around.
Now I know that there's some companies that give a couple extra days off a year,
Well, you're thinking of a floating holidays.
floating holidays. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, is let's say that you're gonna give employees X number of hours a year, and maybe you have a different accrual rates for people that have been there for 1 year, 5 years, whatever it happens, how it's set up at your company. Then why not give discretion for 2 of those of the holidays? You say, "These are our set holidays." Maybe you've got 7 set holidays, and then you go, "Here's 2 floating holidays a year you pick." And then if your company doesn't have off, the person can take it and take that time off to be with their family because maybe there's a holiday that they value in their family or in their culture. Allow them to have some choice.
Well, not only that, but when it comes to giving an offer to somebody, if you're adding floating holidays in with the vacation time, and I guess sick time as well, and any charitable time, people kind of mentally lump that together, and they see that the bigger picture with what the company is going to provide for them. One thing I have found as a long-term recruiter, when I am trying to recruit people out of one company to another, if somebody has been with a company for 5 years, and let's say all of a sudden now, instead of having 2 weeks paid vacation, they have 4 weeks paid vacation,
Sure.
but they wanna leave. That 4 weeks paid vacation, of course, now is, that's obviously a retention motivator, right? To keeping that employee there. But if the employee really wants to leave, wants to go someplace else, that new company oftentimes will lose the opportunity to hire that person because they want to start them at 2 weeks with suggestion there to help bridge that.
Paid time off, vacation time is also negotiable in salaries for anybody that doesn't know. So if you go to a new company, when you and this is why I also advise people that come to me for help when they're looking for a job, never to take an offer over the phone, to say, "Hey, Denise, can you please email that to me so I can review it and then I'll answer you back." Is part of your comp negotiation is also your paid time off negotiation. And I'd like to touch on something else that you brought up, and that's when you bring new people on, what it looks like to attract them, because I think that many companies, Denise, are missing out on how they structure their job ads, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So let me give an example. If you open any job ad on, let's say, the 2 biggest job boards right now are Indeed and LinkedIn, it will have information about the role, it'll have information about the company, and then maybe at the bottom you get 1 or 2 bullets about what's good for you in the whole thing. That makes no sense whatsoever. You can't attract somebody to come into your company by talking about what they can do for you. You have to talk about what you can do for them. So how about a job description and a job ad where at the top are the WIFMs, the what's in it for me right off the bat. So let's say that you're fully transparent in the first thing that says, this is the salary, because a lot of states still don't require that the salary is in there. Be transparent. It's going that way across the country anyway. List the damn salary. So right there, tell them what the real range of the salary is. That's number 1 point of what's in it for the employee. Number 2, this, and be totally transparent. Is this a 5 days in the office job? Is this a hybrid job? If so, how many days in office and at home? And then, or is this a fully remote job? And put that right away for bullet number 2. Bullet number 3 can be, this is the amount that the company contributes to benefits, either the dollar amount or the percentage towards benefits. Next thing, number 4 could be your charitable time off. Next thing could be the sabbatical. Next thing could be, so list out right away what benefit it is to the employee to come to the company. Because if I'm applying and I'm looking at jobs, then I'm going to go, okay, well, I have no idea. And from company size, titles can be all over the place. If you apply for a director role at a tiny company, a director role can be over 10 people. And at a huge company, a director role can have 100 people downline reporting to it. It's completely different. If you don't list the salary and the realistic view of what the position is, people are going to have no idea. And you're going to have to, by the way, have your recruiting HR department spend a massive amount of time trying to figure out why all these people that you don't think are qualified for the role are applying for it because you weren't clear about what really was needed to do it.
Wow. I love that. I love the fact that what's in it for me. That is so important, especially we're rolling into a new year. And there have been a couple of industries that have been flat this last year or two. And we're hearing through the grapevine that things are supposed to pick back up again. So this is going to be a employee market versus the employer market again as we roll into the new year. Especially I think typically and historically it's usually around the end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter you really see a big push for hiring. So this is a good time for companies to know and to understand what they need to do, not just from a retention standpoint, but how are you going to hire? What are those, like you said, the WIFMs? I love that for the employees and revamping their position descriptions and adding in what is in it for the employee. I do love to companies that add little some information about the role and some of the things they have to look forward to in the job itself as part of their what's in it for me. Because I mean, just listing out what the qualifications are and the responsibilities, it almost looks like a driving test or something. And it's just so they're so boring. And I cannot tell you how many job descriptions that I have revamped where I take out things like must have good communication skills. I take that. I mean,
What does that mean? Yeah.
why are you putting that into a job description?
Mhm.
Some of the things that people put in, or the must have, you must have this. It's like, take those words out of your job description. Those words should not be in a job description. You can rephrase your job descriptions. That's a whole different conversation in itself.
It is. I want before you move forward, I want to talk about something that you brought up though. And you said that you're hearing rumblings that it's going to move back to being an employee market in 25. And what I will tell you is I think it's going to be heavily split. I think that for executives, for leadership, and for people with skills that people will pay for, it is going to be a much better market going into 25. But remember, with the way that we're moving for the new administration, it's going to be production heavy. It's going to be things made in America ready. All of those things will push industry up. And so there'll be a lot more of those jobs pushing forward in 25. And I don't know if it will be easier for people to get jobs in that market or not. Now, we had the tech bubbles burst. So now the tech folks have had a ton of layoffs the last couple of years, right? So I think that if I give advice to anybody, it is to really define what your skill set is going into 25 if you're looking the market, because you can get people to pay you a lot if you've got a skill set for something. But if you've just kind of worked here and there and you're kind of just trying to take any job that's available, I think that's still a rough spot to be in going into 25. And also, I know this is not a popular opinion, especially with our generation and in the way that we were raised, but I think one of my biggest predictions for 25 is you're going to have a dramatic shift away from college towards trade schools and production. I think we're losing about 300,000 plumbers, electricians, HVAC, and welders a year compared to what we've had. And I know working for a payroll company the last 5 years before I came over to InZone, where I was consulting, that a lot of those folks make 150, $200,000 plus dollars to go to trade school for 6 months to a year and get their certification, often while working at an internship for the certification, getting union wages and benefits, versus people that are going to college and coming out with 60 to $100,000 of debt and finding 40 and $50,000 jobs. There's going to be a huge shift and the gap is going to get bigger in people that go, why go to college when I can go to trade school for 6 months and make north of $100,000? I think that the gap is going to increase.
No, I agree. And I've actually heard that from other people. I attended a couple of conferences this year where it came up, and there was one company, a data analytics company, that had given some stats around that. And the one person that I spoke with had also mentioned digital credentialing. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, so Google came out with, I think it was about a year ago now. I might be a little off on my time frame, but this is when I saw it. So Google came out with like their own university essentially. And but it was not like a degree, it was certifications. Google certifications for different things around tech and around business and operations. And so those certifications take anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get. And companies have started to ask for that instead of college degrees now for those certifications for jobs that are $80,000 to $120,000 right off of getting a 3-month certification is a huge turn to those certifications because it's a direct skill set that's needed to perform a role versus college where you come out with a bunch of knowledge that may or may not fit into the peg that the company needs you for.
Right. Correct. I think you bring up a really good point about that. And I do agree that we're going to see a bigger disparity with the college, the requirements for college education or college educated employees, I should say, versus people with certifications. Also, the trades, like you mentioned, I keep hearing a lot, even on programs that I watch, that there's a big push for people to be in the trades. In fact, when you talk about plumbers, electricians, HVAC, and whatnot, they're saying those are the next new billionaires because these people are going to be, yeah, they're going to be in such demand and they're going to,
Their prices are gonna go up. If you have a problem with your toilet in your house or your garbage disposal, the price is gonna go up for that dramatically, I predict, in the last couple of years because there's not enough of these folks. They'll be able to charge a lot more. And the other thing that it's easier than ever in America right now to start your own business, pop an LLC, you can do it online in 10 minutes. And for these people that have 2 or 3 years of this skill set, they can start their own business doing it, market it themselves online for free like we've been talking about, and they'll have it up and running in no time to be able to get clients because there's so much work available.
I wonder what it's going to do though to production. That you mentioned production positions a while ago. What's that going to do to the production population that would normally go into production positions, but they see an opportunity to be self-employed, get these certifications, get these trade certifications, educate themselves in these trades. I mean, there's that market of people, right?
To answer your question, I wish that the folks that DM me and ask me these questions, I wish there was a way that I could reach more people to be able to tell them to take this road where they can get union wages and benefits while they go to trade school a lot of the time and come out with a really great paying job in 6 months to a year and a half. And the problem is that there's just still not enough education out there for people that this is a way that you can go. Because like I grew up, I didn't even hear of trade school. I heard go to college, go to college, go to college, or go to work, go to work, go to work. And I think now, as more people talk about it on social media as a viable way to go, I think that it's important. But you raised something earlier about the new generation. The new generation in the workplace will tell you that they don't have as many in person conversations. They have more difficulty with confrontation at work or having what we call tough conversations, which you and I would just call having a conversation at work before, but it feels confrontational to a lot of folks in the younger generation. And so for them to go into physical labor jobs is maybe not something that's at the forefront when they've been raised on so much technology. So I think that we have a couple more years of people figuring out that that's a viable path. And once people just keep hearing over and over, oh, Bob went to trade school for a year and now he makes $150,000. That's a crazy thing to hear when you're sitting there and you're like, well, I've been working at the store over here for 2 years and I'm still making $2 more than minimum wage. I got to do something. So I think it'll progress that way, but I think it's going to take time, Denise.
Oh yeah, I know that you bring up a good point. Now let's talk about two companies, going back to the corporations, corporate America though, and retention. Are you hearing still that a lot of companies are providing people who don't have the college education yet, but maybe they've got some skills, they were hired in as interns, or maybe they have a bachelor's degree, but they want to advance themselves. Your B players maybe want to go up to A, your A players want to advance themselves. What about the education benefits? Are you hearing that their companies are still supplying those?
I to be honest with you, I haven't heard as many companies say that they're doing that. I think once companies get to scale, once they get to a size of over 1,000 people, a lot of times you start to see that. but also with the loyalty issue that we have in America, both from the company side, and companies have to take their responsibility for this all the time too, because they lay off people with no notice and then expect people to give 2 weeks or a month notice. It's not realistic at all, right? They're doing this and creating a disloyal feeling of mistrust between the employer and the employee as well, that to then invest in somebody to help them go to college or whatever it is, I don't see companies jumping to do that as much as they used to. And if they do, they usually have some type of a holdback agreement where it's like, well, we'll pay for this, maybe $5,000 a year towards college or something like that. But then if you leave within 4 years, you've got to pay it back, that type of a thing. And and so I see that more and more, Denise. But I think that companies have to figure out with internal training and development programs how they can help people get to where they need to be successful in their organizations. And I think the biggest gap there is just companies don't have any training and development programs in place once somebody is in their specific job. So there's not stuff on communication, coaching, conflict resolution, succession planning, change management, all of the things that go down line that people need to learn how to do to be able to be successful in any corporate business in America. Companies aren't picking up that ball and running with it because many of them don't know how. I would say that if you have a person within your organization, maybe in HR or a management person that you think is an A player that really wants some more responsibility, that you send them to get a course on that, that you think that they'll be able to go and teach other people in your organization that, and then they can come back. And that's something that you could pay for as a company. You're making an investment in that person with the understanding that they're going to come back. And once a month for the next 3 months, you're going to put this on the calendar that people can come and go to a course on communication or change management or whatever you happen to have it on. That's valuable down the line, is to say, here's something that you can learn to better yourself if you'll also invest in these people in our company and do 3 classes on it.
Sure. In fact, it's interesting. I talked to a colleague or spoke with a colleague last week who said she just finished a 3-day leadership training course. She's a director herself with a large company. And she said it was amazing. And she learned so much, but it was an offsite. It was provided by a third party company who came in and gave them all sorts of leadership training. And she said it was a valuable training.
Right.
So she said
Right.
she really benefited from it.
Now, is the ball dropped there, though, that you invested in that person or had that person out of office for 3 days, and then that information from that doesn't go down line to the other people in the company that would find it valuable? That's where companies drop the ball. Is Sarah went to this training, it was terrific, she came back raving about it. Okay, can it be packaged up a little bit and taught to the other people in the company that would be interested in that or it's valuable to? And we don't do that a lot of the time.
Sure. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I don't know how they handled that. I didn't even think to ask her about that. But yeah, no, that's a good point in itself. Something else you brought up too in your book that I want to talk about, and it's kind of going off a little bit, but I think it's important to bring up is progressive discipline versus PIPs. I th- Why did you put that in your book?
So I think PIPs are useless. And I think that they're dangerous for companies. And the reason that they're dangerous for companies is they're too long. It doesn't take 3 months to turn around an employee's behavior, which is the typical length of a PIP. And also, what I have seen over the years through many different companies and many different types of leaders is that the company creates a liability for themselves. If you say, okay, we're going to put Bob on a PIP because he hasn't been performing, and it's going to be 90 days for him to turn it around. And then some stipulation in the PIP will be that his manager is supposed to meet with him every 2 weeks to go over his performance and train him and coach him. And what inevitably happens after maybe a month of Bob is doing just a little bit better, so the manager kind of takes their foot off the gas, and then they don't maybe do 1 or 2 of the sessions. And then at the end of it, you go, and Bob starts to slip again at the end of the third month, and you go, I think we're going to have to let Bob go. And then you go, oh, but on the PIP, we missed 2 or 3 of the sessions. So now if that paperwork gets pulled in and Bob says, hey, I was wrongfully terminated, they didn't even do their part on the PIP. That's what happens all the time. Companies drop the ball on PIPs all the time. It's too much documentation. They're going to be too much of something as well. So the easiest way to do progressive discipline for anybody that's a leader that wants to try to turn people around, and remember, the point of progressive discipline is to be able to try to turn people around and retain them if you can, or get them out the door and onto their next role and somebody else in there in a timely fashion. So it never should take a company more than 60 days to outprocess an employee that's not working out. And let me explain how that works. So if you have we'll use Bob again. So if you say Bob hasn't been performing, we're going to meet him today and we're going to give him a verbal warning. And the verbal warning is super simple. It just looks like this. Bob, you're doing great at A, B, and C. D, E, and F, we're not on the same page on. This is what we need you to do. We're going to meet again. And right there in front of him, when you're meeting with him, you calendar it for 30 days forward. Today is the 11th of December. So on January 11th, you guys are going to get together and you're going to meet and you're going to evaluate either way whether he's doing great and we don't need to continue on with discipline, or whether we need to reevaluate where things are at that point. This is very important that you do it live right there so you don't drop the ball as the employer. And it's also very important that you set that date in the calendar and invited Bob to that meeting, because can you imagine if he starts to turn things around and you kind of go in your head, just check, you're busy, you got a million things going on, you go, Bob's kind of doing better, I think he's good. And now it's 45 days later and Bob's like, am I still going to get fired? Like, what is happening to me here? So you got to return to them and just say, Bob, you're doing great, or you showed improvement, or you're doing really well. Or at that point, after that 30 days, you're going to say, okay, now we've got a written warning because things have continued to slip and you haven't been able to turn things around and improve. And by the way, it's that manager's job in that 30 days to coach Bob back up to success. That's literally what you're paying them for. So if Bob can't be turned around after 30 days of the manager and him trying together, then at that 30 days, you're going to give him a written warning. And you're going to say, okay, things have continued to not be at the level that we need. This is still where we're at, and some additional things have slipped. We're going to meet in 2 weeks, and at that time, we're going to make a final evaluation as to what's going to happen as far as your future here at the company. We want you to turn things around, but if you get to the written warning part now, you're at 2 weeks after that 30-day warning happened, then you go, okay. So you sit down with them, and at that point, it's going to be a term. And that's at the end of 60 days. That's all it takes to get somebody out safely. The employer has 3 pieces of documentation that shows that they tried to turn Bob around. And if they can't, then Bob at that time will get released. And the easiest way to release somebody is just to do it on the performance of the metrics that they were supposed to achieve in their job. Doesn't mean that they're a bad person. Doesn't mean that they're not a great fit for another company. Just at our company in this role, they were not a good fit. And so if you say to them at that time, I know we've had several conversations when you release somebody, and it's a hard day whenever you have to release somebody for the employer, but it's a much harder day for the employee. They're having a way worse day than you. So you have to remember that, and you have to try to be as kind and just decent as possible about this. And you have to sit down and say, hey, Bob, I know we had several conversations to turn things around. We weren't able to get you producing the way that we needed you to. And for that reason, we're going to go ahead and release you from employment today. And you give them their paperwork and we say, we're sorry it didn't work out and it didn't turn out to be a good fit for you and for us. And we wish you the best going forward. Now, that little talk that you and I had was about 10 to 15 seconds. It can be a little longer than that, but it doesn't need to be that much longer than that. People draw it out and then it becomes this personal thing where a lot of feelings get involved and everything else. Yes, you have to be kind to the person, but this should never be a surprise when somebody's released. Unless somebody does something egregious, it should never be a surprise when somebody is released. There should have been a build-up to then where they've been talked to multiple times to do it. So I think PIPs, 90, 120-day PIPs, there's no reason to do it. It doesn't take that long to release somebody. And also, for the person, it's a little bit torturous to go a whole quarter or a quarter and a half just seeing if you're going to be able to retain your job. And let's be honest, if somebody gets a PIP put in front of them, their thing in their head is, okay, now I've got 90 to 120 days to try to find a new job because they're going to get rid of me. But if you sit down with somebody with a verbal and you're like, listen, all you've got to fix is D, E, and F, and we'll be on the same page. You talk to them again in a month. They're good to go. Hey, you corrected this stuff. And by the way, document it. Send them a follow-up email. Bob, hey, I know we talked 30 days ago. We wrote down what things you needed to work on. You've done a great job turning these things around. Keep it up. I appreciate the effort. Boom. And he feels good about it and he can continue to go forward and work. But we leave people in this limbo that's unnecessary with PIPs.
One thing you brought up too in the book, when you do have to let somebody go, to be nice to them, is
Yes.
to offer to approve their unemployment.
Yeah. So I don't want to be too harsh about this, but if you do something to another human being, they really only have 2 choices. And one is just to kind of roll over and take it, and the other is to fight back. And so if you're a jerk to them because you have feelings about this too, a relationship splitting up of any kind is always difficult. And maybe you're thinking, I really tried with Bob for 2 months. He just didn't even try. I'm really frustrated. Now I got to recruit somebody else. I got to get them in. I got to train them. It's going to be a pain in the hind end. It's like just you're frustrated with it. Okay, take all that. Today is not the day for that. Be as kind and decent to Bob as you can when you release him. And the reason that I don't think that companies should be blocking unemployment is because Now you leave the human being with no mechanism to be able to feed themselves or their family. And they're already going to have a degradation by far. We all know that unemployment doesn't just take 2 weeks, it takes forever and the thing is backed up. And if you can even get it, it's a pain in the butt. But the point is that that's going to be a big degradation to their pay on top of how they feel about themselves from losing this position. So to then block their unemployment and have them get a letter a month or two later that says your company blocked it, especially if they were trying and it just wasn't a good fit for the position, why would you do that as the employer? Does that little bit benefit you? Because if you take away somebody's wages to be able to feed themselves or their family, well, then they might go get a labor attorney and sue you for wrongful termination, or they might go file a Department of Labor complaint, or they're going to go to Glassdoor and Yelp and Google reviews and throw a bunch of shade at you. And so be decent to people, and you hope in that case that they'll be decent in return. It doesn't always turn out that way, as we know. Anytime you end any relationship, it can end really badly or it can end well. I mean, you don't always know how people are going to react. So I just encourage people, like, if they need a letter with their employment dates, if you cannot block their unemployment.
How do you do that though? I mean, as an employer, when I receive those letters, for people I've had to lay off if a project ends or whatnot, I'll get the letters and then I have to either put down that they were laid off or that they were not fired necessarily, but let go for reason or whatnot. How
Yeah.
do you, as the
Well,
employer, listen?
yeah, not only every state, but every county does this differently. Some of them are online to get it in an email as an employer now versus paper, how it used to be. And so, or you go on their portal and do it. But the important thing is that if it was egregious, if they stole, if they violated some severe company policy, if they sexually harassed someone, something really inappropriate, then yeah, I think you have a right as the employer to say that, hey, we have issue with this. But if it's just like the person tried and it didn't work out, go ahead and write right on there, please grant the unemployment. We don't wish to block the employee
Okay,
from
okay.
receiving this.
All right.
And I think that that's the most humane
Sure.
way to deal with this situation. And also, you save yourself a lot of problems later because being decent in the moment also can save you later from having more pain.
Sure. Okay, I didn't know you could do that because some of the forms that I received say laid off or terminated with cause, and you have to put down what the cause is. So,
Yeah, and write it right in there. I would just type, hey, please grant this employee's
okay,
unemployment. We don't wish to block it.
got it. No, because I think it's the nicest thing to do. It really is. You know,
And it hurts you too as an employer.
well, and another point that you brought up too about the 60 days, about the progressive discipline, is the fact that if somebody isn't gonna work out, you need to repost a position, and you
You
talk
do.
about that in your book, and if they
Yeah.
ask about it, you have to tell them, "Yes, I'm reposting your position in case we do have to replace you." So
Little added motivation. It's not super pretty. But if you're like, hey, if you can turn things around, we want you here. We want you to be here. We've invested a year, 2 years, however many months, whatever they've been there with you, and we want you to be successful. But if it doesn't work out, we still have to have somebody to do this work. And then they're either going to very quickly go, I'm going to fix this immediately, or they're going to go, I'm getting the heck out of here and I'm going to spend every moment when I'm home applying for new jobs. Either way, it's going to reach resolution.
exactly. Exactly. This is an amazing book. I didn't even cover, I mean, I only covered a few key points that I thought that we should talk about on our session today. But I mean, there are so many reporting structure, territory quarterly meetings. I mean, there are just the untrained manager we did talk about a little bit. I think that it would be great to have another conversation at some point to talk about training and development though. Because
Yeah, I'd love
training
to.
and
In fact, I'm going to do my next book on training and development.
it's huge. And just like my friend said last week, training development, she's been in the business as long as I have. And again, she's a leader, but she said, We're never too experienced or too old or whatever to receive training and development. I mean, especially with new technology coming in right now, just change, like you said, change in administration, change in the work environment, change in the generations that are coming into work now, because that is a big topic of discussion. Working with people who have a different mindset. These are the new employees. We have to learn what their mindset is. We have to learn what is going to motivate them. How are we going to retain them? Are they our class B people or are they class A? I think a lot of them want to be class A. They tell us they're class A because they're dictating what they want in their life, right? but they do want to advance. I do see a lot of overachievers right now with the Gen Zs, which I think is great. I think it's fabulous. But as
If they can step up and perform, it absolutely is.
sure, but how do we retain them? How do we keep them motivated? And how do we also put them some of them put themselves on a little bit of a pedestal. How do we put them though, or treat them where they have to understand you really kind of have to work towards these goals. You can't just leapfrog from being a B player to an A player at the top end of the A player bracket here with 2 years of experience. I mean, you just
Uh, I have a not nice way to answer that, and the not nice way that I handle that is that I give them a little bit of that higher level responsibility, and then I see if they can step up to it or if they fall on their face. So I give them opportunities to step into things and be able to take on, maybe to come to a little bit higher level meeting than they would be invited to once in a while, or to take a little part of a project that you're doing and do one part of it and get it back to you a week before you have to turn it in and see how they do. But give them an opportunity to step into it and do it. And then when they kind of like, you'll see right away, people will either choop right away, I can do it, or they'll just crash. And so it's a good indicator then of really what you're dealing with because again, speed is different now than it was when I started working. And people are able to develop themselves a lot faster as well, especially if they're motivated. People can hop on and do. You know the people in your company that are always taking courses, that are always learning, that are always going to this networking event, that are always doing this post, because those people are not just trying to do good in their role, they're trying to prepare themselves for the next role. And that's also where I know in the recruiting market that you know so well is that companies make the other mistake on top of hiring people that are just like them is hiring people that are below the role and hoping that they'll come up or hiring people that are just for the experience for the role. But if your company is growing quickly or you're progressing or you need new ideas or you're taking on more work, you need somebody that can do that next level up of work. And so companies need to not be afraid of that too. And sometimes there's a little bit of fear of managers of getting somebody that's too close to their level to come in and take on work. But that's the only way you can get people work off your plate is to bring in some people with some actual chops.
yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely correct. Great conversation. Anything that you'd like to share before we close up?
No, it's been really nice to talk to you. I'd love to do another one on training and development. And I just think, like I said, a lot of the things that are out there in the book, we've been able to institute it in Zone. I've been able to institute at other companies, and it's simply a matter of if you put employee appreciation in place and you do it regularly. It's not difficult to do, and it's really important. And especially to the two younger generations that are in our workforce and that are coming into our workforce, they value it heavily. And the second thing is that you have to train and develop your people. Whatever that looks like for your company is invest either in the training and development of your people, or you're going to spend all your time training brand new people and trying to get them up to speed. You
And
pick.
co and it's gonna cost you a fortune. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, again, the name of your book is called The Employee Retention Bible, and Matt Rieck is the author. And so I recommend I love it. I think it's a great book. It's an easy read, really, and you bring up a lot of amazing points. Hey, and like I mentioned in my LinkedIn, great stocking stuffer for all of you guys who are gonna have office parties.
I appreciate that very much, Denise.
No,
Yeah.
seriously, I think every employer needs a copy. Every employer needs a copy. It's without a doubt. And every HR team. I mean, really, seriously, you need several for your
It's I
executives,
think
your
it's a
HR
good
team.
fit for HR leaders, especially developing ones to be able to understand how they can actually affect forming the culture of companies they go into, because it's really important. We get into HR because we want to help people.
So how can people reach you, Matt?
So they can reach me on my LinkedIn, and if they want to pick up a copy of the book, it's available on Amazon, and we've got it in Kindle or paperback or hard copy there as well. So they can reach out to me, and I'll get back to them on LinkedIn as I go through the DMs about once a week to try to reach back out to anybody that has questions for me. And I've also got my own website with the spelling of my name. It's just mattrieck.com. And in addition to services that I have available there. On the bottom of the mattrieck.com website, I've got free templates for HR people, for job seekers. I've got a free guide on how to get hired there that's very extensive, that has all the best remote and in-person job sites, everything else. And I've got templates on there for succession planning and progressive discipline, everything else that is listed in the book to try to help support everybody. And it's all free. You can just click on it and download it right from there.
Oh my gosh. And I recommend people buy a hard copy because, like you said, you can take notes. Just the way the book is laid out and the format that you used, it's great for being able to take some notes in here as well. So, well, thank you, Matt. I really appreciate this. And we'll have another
It's been
conversation
wonderful to talk
around,
to you.
yes, around training and development.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thanks so much.
You bet.